How's it going, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome back to another deck profile. This time we're featuring Photon Galaxy, but not for this current format, but this is for Master Rule 5, which of course going into effect in April of this year, here in 2020. This deck is also getting some new support as well, so this profile will be featuring test hands in the Master Rule 5 rule set, as well as brand new cards that will hopefully be out sometime later this year once Master Rule 5 has already been into effect. And those cards that I am playing here that are not currently out yet in the TCG are cards like Union Carrier here in the extra deck, and of course a very important and pivotal card in the main deck, which is Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon. Now I know there's some other cards that aren't out yet for the TCG that are for the Galaxy Eyes archetype, and that one I want to bring up is the Hyper Galaxy Quick Play. Some people have asked me about that card, playing as maybe a one-of. I just really don't like the idea of it. It doesn't seem like a very good going first card. Really has like no value for going first, which I play this deck primarily as a going first deck, so opting not to play that in here. But yeah, we're going to do a normal profile, the breakdown, talk about side decking, and then of course do a test hand or two at the end to finish things up. So now we'll get started with the profile here. And to start, we have 3 copies of Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Then we have 3 copies of Galaxy Knight, 3 copies of Galaxy Brave, 2 copies of the new Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon. Still really liking it at 2 for the time being in testing. 3 Galaxy Soldier, 3 Photon Orbital, 3 Photon Vanisher, and 1 Photon Thrasher, and then 1 Photon, or Galaxy Wizard, not Photon Wizard, my bad. For the monsters. Now for the spells, we have 3 Trade-In, 3 Galaxy Expedition, 3 Photon Sanctuary, which basically might as well be Photon Orbital, 2 Pot of Desires, 1 Upstart Goblin, 1 Reinforcement in the Army, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Galaxy Trance. That sums it up for the spells. And 3 traps, where I just have 3 Tachyon Transmigration. You could replace this with Impermanence if you wanted to, but if you don't have Impermanence, this card works just as well. Very, very, very strong counter trap for the archetype. Then moving on to the extra deck for the links, we just have 2 copies of Sulfur Dragon and 1 copy of the Union Carrier, which is incredible. 2 copies of number 90, 1 Cypher Blade, 1 Full Armor, 1 Cypher Dragon, 1 number 38 Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, 1 number 107 Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon, 1 number 62 Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon, 1 Divine Dragonite Felgran. Then we have the Cyber Dragon Nova and Cyber Dragon Infinity, and then 1 copy of the Starliege Photon Blast Dragon, of course, last but not least. So that's it for the standard profile. Now we'll go ahead and do a breakdown of all the card rolls within the deck. So first up here, we have the starters for the deck, and you might have noticed if since the last time I did the starters for this deck have changed, primarily because Photon Sanctuary becomes such an amazing card now because of Union Carrier. Sanctuary is a 1-card Union Carrier because this card only takes 2 monsters with the same type or attribute. So, of course, those tokens fit the bill. So, again, here we have the 3 Galaxy Soldier, 1 Photon Thrasher, 1 Galaxy Wizard, 3 Sanctuary, 2 Desires, and the 1 Rhoda. So, these are the cards that I have chosen as the starters. And, again, I'll give the same reason that I do for all the profiles, just to sort of keep a standard of what I define and what should technically be defined as a starter card. Cards that take the least amount of requirements to be able to activate. They're very, very easy to activate. They help us see more cards. They help us get our engine going and things like that. So for example, we have the 3 Galaxy Soldier. Basically, you can resummon by just discarding any light in your hand, and then upon summon, he gets to search a Galaxy card, a Galaxy monster, that is. So that can search us a wide range of crucial cards that we need for this deck. Cards like Galaxy Knight, Galaxy Brave, and Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, and now the new Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon. So this card allows us to search a wide array of cards in our deck. Not to mention, it can also set up our graveyard for future plays. For example, this discarding Galaxy Eyes to search Galaxy Knight sets up a rank 8 play right out of the gate. Photon Thrasher, I would consider 100% a starter for the simple fact that, like I said in the last profile, A lot of cards in this deck require other cards to already be in play to be able to take advantage of their effects. And those cards include cards like Photon Vanisher, Photon Orbital, Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon, and sort of things like that, just to name a few. So getting Photon monsters or Galaxy monsters on the field very easily is crucial to this deck's consistency and playability. But Thrasher can brick quite a bit because you can only, of course, be special summoned while you control no monsters. So I think playing one is just fine, especially with playing a card like Rhoda, to be able to easily search it out at any given point. Hey guys, Winter from the future here. Forgot to talk about Galaxy Wizard for some reason, but this card is a great normal summon outside of the Galaxy Knight, because sometimes you will not be able to get to set up the Galaxy Knight. So Wizard is a great normal summon to start off some plays, to be able to search out key Galaxy cards like Expedition, Soldier, Galaxy Eyes, Afterglow, you name it. And you can also search out Expedition and things like that. So that card, in my opinion, 100% definitely a starter for those reasons. Now, I'm having the 3 copies of Sanctuary here as a starter card, simply because this card is basically a 1-card Photon Orbital, of course, through Union Carrier. That, of course, allows you just to summon the tokens, link into Union Carrier, use its effect, get Orbital. Orbital gets you a search immediately of basically any monster in your entire deck, any Photon or Galaxy monster. It's absolutely incredible. Of course, then Desires, I include this a lot as a starter card because it basically just allows you to dig into your deck and see more combo pieces, whether it be light monsters to discard for Soldier or just a monster to get on board easily like Brave or Thrasher, or more extenders like Vanisher and things like that. This could also probably be Melody of the Awakening Dragon. I've been thinking about playing Melody. A lot of people have suggested it in that last test hand video, but I still don't know how I feel about that card. Like Galaxy Eyes and Afterglow are great cards to be able to add, but I don't know. I haven't had a chance to really experiment with it yet, and maybe I will going forward. But of course, Desires is still a good option. But if you don't like Desires, Melody, of course, I feel as though could work now that we actually have another good dragon target in this deck to be able to add in Afterglow. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at the superior extenders, and then we'll move on from there. So here we have our superior extenders, and of course these are cards that help to extend upon the plays that we start with. However, some of these cards could be considered starter cards, and some of those cards are cards like Brave and Photon Sanctuary. It of course just depends on what type of hand you're opening, because some plays you'll open these 3 cards together, like Vanisher, Orbital, and Brave, and Brave will be the first card that you need to play in order to make both of these cards live, because this card requires a Photon or Galaxy monster to be able to equip to, and this card requires a Photon or Galaxy monster on the field to be able to special summon and of course get a search of Galaxy Eyes. And same thing applies to Photon Sanctuary. While yes, this can get right into Photon Orbital, but let's say you already have a Photon Orbital in your hand, and you have both of these cards, you'll need Sanctuary to be able to be in play to be able to make these cards live, or if you have a card like Afterglow Dragon and maybe Expedition, you'll need Sanctuary to go up into Soul Flare. Soul Flare will allow you to special summon Afterglow, and then Expedition will allow you to continue on from there. So it really depends. So this card could be considered sort of an additional extender because, you know, the sequencing of when you'll end up playing that card. But in general, these are the cards that can extend upon our starting plays. Sanctuary can be played later on in the turn to be able to make Soul Flare, to be able to recycle back that Galaxy Knight, to be able to sort of follow up with that and make additional plays. But Brave, like I said, of course, serving the main role, being able to make cards like Vanisher and Orbital live, of course, is a trade-in target. Then you have cards like Orbital, which of course are just searching you more resources. Same thing with Vanisher, in the end, setting up trade-ins as well. Sanctuary, of course, has the role of either, you know, getting easy access to Orbital, making cards like Vanisher and Orbital live, or making cards like Soul Flare readily accessible. Expedition, of course, is another thing. Again, it could be additional or superior because how easy we can get to the Galaxy Soldier, and of course Galaxy Soldier being one of the better starters in the deck. Expedition, of course, can just summon out another one, or can summon out a Galaxy Eyes or an Afterglow. to be able to make more Link plays or more Xyz plays. And then, of course, Monster Born is just Monster Born, summoning out more pieces to be able to make more plays with. So these are the cards that I've selected for superior extenders. And again, everything is sort of not set in stone. You have cards like Brave, which of course could be a starter card. And then same thing with Sanctuary as well, as I've already listed as a starter card. Of course, there are just some cards that serve multiple roles. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at the additional extenders. So next up we have our additional extenders, and of course the main difference between additional extenders and superior extenders is the activation requirement. How easy are they to activate, and how much more power do they add to the overall power level of the deck? Usually additional extenders add more powerful plays to the deck as opposed to superior extenders, which don't add as much power, but they do add to sort of consistency because they are more easier to pull off and things like that, whereas our additional extenders aren't as easy to meet the requirements for, but do add much more a higher ceiling and higher capabilities of the deck than the superior extenders do. And that's why we have a bit fewer of them, and again, you're seeing some sort of cross rolls here, like Expedition. Expedition could be superior, could be also sort of counted as additional. I feel like it fits a bit better in the additional category. Now, Afterglow Dragon I would put as an additional extender, mainly because of the activation requirement, which you need to control a Galaxy Eyes monster. Now, that either means you need Soul Flare, or you need a Galaxy Eyes already on the board, which means you've already resolved something like this, which means you've already gotten a level 5 or higher on the board, or it means you've already resolved something like this, which means you've already gone through your graveyard setup and getting a monster on board already to make this card live to be able to bring out Galaxy Eyes and things like that. So of course Galaxy Knight is in here 100%. Expedition, same thing as well. You already need that level 5 or higher on board, and you might also want to wait to the right time in the turn to be able to play the Expedition to be able to complete crucial plays. Afterglow Dragon I already mentioned, and as a fact too, also when detached, be able to summon out a Galaxy Eyes from hand or deck. That will require already having a rank 8 play readily available to you, which means you've already needed to get a Galaxy Eyes monster in play, and then play a card like this to be able to complete the rank 8 play, or have a card like this already be live through graveyard setup with a card like Trade-In. Or Galaxy Soldier. So you can see it sort of just takes more setup to make these cards live, but they do allow for much higher ceiling and more powerful plays. Of course, the one card rank 8, this completing rank 8s and infinities and things like that. This again completing rank 8s and also using its detach effect to make more rank 8s. This card, of course, here does add great consistency to the deck, does help to unbrick hands. This card you could label as a starter card 100%. We do play tons of level 8 targets in this deck, so definitely justifiable as a starter. But I wanted to showcase it here as an additional extender, mainly because one of the more prominent level 8s in this deck is Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, which I have labeled as an engine requirement for this deck. And getting him set up in the graveyard is absolutely crucial. And Trade-In is one of the best cards to do it, since the Galaxy Eyes is so searchable in this deck. There's so many cards that search it out, either from the deck and summon it to the field, like Expedition, or cards that add it to your hand, like a myriad of cards that do that, Soldier, Vanisher, and Orbital, all doing that same thing, and then making this card live, puts it in the graveyard to ultimately be set up for Galaxy Knight, and of course allows you to draw into some more combo pieces, because that, I think, is the most optimal way to set up a Galaxy Knight at the end of the day, besides using Soldier. For that clutch discard, is using a card like Trade-In to make it live immediately. And then, of course, Galaxy Trance. This card is more so of a follow-up card on turn 3. This is something you want to try to search off of your number 90 in some cases to be able to follow up with another rank 8 play. It does have a very strict activation requirement. It does lock you into Photon Galaxy monsters and things like that. So if you're trying to make an establishing field using Infinity and Falgran, this card really isn't going to help you do that. So turn 3, it's sort of better once you already have a board made, and you can just sort of follow up and push for game from there. So these are the cards that I have labeled as our additional extenders. And again, cards are subject to being, sort of existing within multiple roles. You could argue again, Afterglow could be a superior. This could be a starter card, of course. Expedition could also be a superior extender as well. It really just varies, you know, turn to turn. But I think from a general standpoint, the way I've labeled things is sort of how I would, you know, have everything labeled in a hierarchy of what cards are more important, how they should be played out in sort of sequence, and you know, how you should sort of prioritize certain cards. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at defensive cards in the deck, and really that is just 3 Tachyon Transmigration. There's really nothing else to be said about this. In fact, the one thing arguably you could say for like balancing with this deck is it does lack defense, but I sort of like disagree with that and disagree with myself sometimes, because a lot of this deck's defense comes in the extra deck, and this is one of those defensive cards that you really would only want to play in the main deck. Unfortunately, it is not searchable, even though it is such a nice card, nice looking card, but its effect is absolutely amazing. But it's just one of those cards that fits well. You definitely want main decked protection and defense with a deck like this, especially one that goes first a lot. So maining these traps, of course, is a no-brainer to me, especially when playing Desires. So if you do banish 2 copies, you still have 1 copy in the deck to at least try to draw into off of a trade-in, or a Desires, or an Upstart, whatever it may be. So of course, having that crucial bit of defense in the deck is very nice. And then moving on, of course, to the engine requirements of the deck, and that is 3 Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, because he really serves no other role in this deck other than to just, you know, fulfill the activation requirements of other cards, like, and be able to resolve their effects. For example, like Photon Vanisher, when he's summoned, he searches Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. When Galaxy Knight is summoned, he can revive one of these from grave. And same thing with Afterglow Dragon. Now, when he's detached, you can summon the good old Galaxy Eyes from your hand or your deck. So a lot of cards, and same thing with Soul Flare. You can discard this off Soul Flare to be able to destroy a special summon monster. So there's a lot of cards in the deck that rely on this card being somewhere for you to be able to activate and resolve a certain effect, which is very key and crucial to this deck's game plan. I could not stress that enough. And then the last card, the placeholder card, the Upstart Goblin. The only purpose is to drop the deck count below 40, so we can be a bit more consistent. And then going into the extra deck real quick, I think going forward, I'll probably spend a little bit less time talking about the extra deck and the roles in the extra deck, and sort of focus more just on the card roles within the main deck. But again, I'll go ahead and sort everything out real quick just to show you guys sort of my thought process on the cards in the extra deck and what they do. Okay, so here's the extra deck broken down in sort of 3 simple categories. You have your defense, your removal, and your extenders. Now, again, there are cards in here that could serve all 3 of these roles. You know, the Soul Flare Dragon is defense in terms of removal, essentially by being able to discard, and it's also sort of an extender because it can, you know, enable recycling. So this card can exist in a couple different roles, however you want to look at it, whether it's an extender, a removal, or just, you know, a defensive card all around, whatever it may be. And then, of course, you have the Titanic Galaxy for negating spells. That is a bit of a floodgates card for certain types of matchups. And then you have Infinity. The Nova, of course, is just sort of like a engine requirement for the Infinity. And then Photon Lord could not be more of a defensive card in this deck. Negates monster effects, can't be destroyed by card effects. Searches you a card during your opponent's turn. Felgrand, same thing, very defensive, and can also extend now with Afterglow Dragon. This is like the primary reason that you play the Felgrand, is because you can use the detach effect on your turn 1, detach the Afterglow, and trigger Afterglow's effect to summon out of Galaxy Eyes to be able to make another rank 8 play on top of the Felgrand. So you can follow up with Felgrand into a number 90, and then maybe an Infinity on top of that for just more defense. Blast Dragon, very, very defensive card because of the protection it gives to all monsters you control with over 2,000 attack. But you can also consider it as an extender because on summon, you can summon a Photon monster from your hand, primarily Galaxy Eyes. And you can also use the effect during your opponent's turn to be able to summon a banished Galaxy Eyes from your, or summon a Galaxy Eyes that is banished or one that is in your grave. So that can come in clutch, because I find myself more often than not, you know, going Thrasher, Vanisher, adding the Galaxy Eyes, and then overlaying into this, and then using its effect to special the Galaxy Eyes, and then, you know, like making an Expedition live, or making an Afterglow live, and just going from there, and making more plays. Union Carrier, of course, sole purpose is just to get the orbital out of the deck, and be able to get searches. Really serves no other purpose. And then, of course, you have the Galaxy package here. You have the Cipher Dragon, the full armor, and the Cipher Blade. They really only exist in here for removal, via taking control of the monster and just generic destruction. They are very, very nice in here. Very versatile package to be able to play. And then cards that get like exceedingly better in just terms of removal with the Afterglow Dragon is Tachyon Dragon and Prime Photon. Of course, because when these guys activate their effects, it's in the battle phase. So when Afterglow gets detached during the battle phase, it doubles the attack of all number monsters you control. So of course it can make this guy get to like absolutely absurd amounts of attack points, which is insane for just going for game. And then you have 107, which of course again can go up to 6k, and if your opponent activates any effects in the battle phase, it gets boosted by an additional 1000, and can attack multiple times as well. So a lot of removal, a lot of defense, very little extending in the extra deck. This deck does a lot of its extension in the main deck, in order to be able to put up massive amounts of defense from the extra deck, which is why you see so little defensive cards in the main deck, which is why I decided I would end up cutting cards like Valor and Call by the Grave from the main deck, because I just felt like a lot of that main deck defense was a bit overkill and hurting the overall consistency of the deck in testing, because you know, you just can't underestimate the amount of defense that exists within this deck's extra deck. And that's really where you win most of your games with this deck, is of course in the extra deck. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about side decking. I'll just go through the deck here as a whole and just pull out some cards that I would typically side out. Now, just a general rule of thumb, siding out sort of consistency cards, not the best idea. And what I mean by that is siding out cards like Trade-In, and siding out cards like Desires, or the Upstart Goblin. Of course, if you're going into time, that's something else to take into account. Siding this card out in time when you're getting very close, of course, could be a good idea. But again, just for general consistency, I wouldn't recommend siding out Draw Power unless you absolutely have to, if you don't have the room and you need to put in other cards, because siding out Draw Power for side deck cards literally makes your deck less consistent and worse for going into those other games. So things you can side out ideally would be maybe 1 or 2 copies of the Transmigration if you know you're not going to be going first. Maybe you took game 1 off of them because you won the dice roll and they're going to make you go second. So that's some things to take into account. Siding out cards like 1 Expedition, siding out a copy of a card like Brave, siding out a card like Vanisher, or a card like Monster Reborn. Cards that you're already playing multiples of that you don't really need that many of. Again, you could side out a card like Wizard as well. But just trying to keep in key pieces in multiple copies. Again, you could side out a card like Brave, which I already said. A card like Sanctuary could also be cut out, or not cut out completely, but just cutting down to 1. So you do have some room, possibly for, you know, anywhere from like 7 to 9 slots with this deck, which is really enough considered the amount of draw power that you have within this deck. And you don't want to really overside, especially with how consistent this deck can be with the terms, you know, amount of draw power that you're playing. So yeah, that's just sort of things to take into account. All right, so now that all that is said and done, we're going to wrap this video up with a quick test hand. If you want to see more test hands, more in-depth test hands, don't forget to check out that video up there in the top right. Most recent MR5 Photon Galaxy test hand video, so be sure to check that out. And let's draw into our opening hand here and see what we get. And we have a pretty decent hand to start here. We're going to need our trade-in to put in a little work for us. I'm going to trade in the Galaxy Knight and see what we can get off of this. We get a Rhoda, which is great because we needed that 100%. Or else this hand was going to be pretty much unplayable. We have a whole bunch of unsummonable monsters in our hand. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier in the breakdown, is that you have a lot of cards in this deck that require other monsters to be in play to be able to use their effects, and that's why a card like Thrasher turns on a lot of cards in our hand. So we'll special the Thrasher, special the Vanisher, and then use Vanisher, of course, to search out Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Now we have 2 options. We could either go into the Union Carrier to grab the Orbital, which could grab us a Galaxy Soldier, which of course could pitch this to be able to search another Galaxy card. Or we could overlay into Blast Dragon, summon this out to be able to Expedition for Soldier, to be able to search another Soldier. But I kind of like the route of going into not the rank 4, but rather going into Union Carrier. So we'll use Union Carrier here to go into Orbital, and then send that off to grab a copy of Galaxy Soldier. So of course, the access to Orbital this deck has now is really, really, really nice. Definitely helps for consistency. So at this point, we'll special summon Soldier by discarding the Galaxy Eyes. And then from here, we'll add a copy of the Knight. I know we already have one in our graveyard, but we're probably not going to make Soul Flare this turn. At least I'm not anticipating doing that. And now from this point, we'll normal and special. Then we'll use the Expedition to be able to summon out another copy of Galaxy Soldier from the deck. And you can probably see where this is going to go next. We're going to use Afterglow Dragon here, and then we're going to overlay first, however, into a copy of Nova, then into Infinity. And then from here, we're going to overlay these two into a copy of Felgrand, attaching preemptively. We'll target the Union Carrier, and then use Afterglow Dragon's effect once attached to summon out a Galaxy Eyes from our deck or a hand. And then lastly, we'll go ahead and overlay these two Galaxy Eyes into a copy of the number 90. And then if we wanted to, we could just use Infinity to absorb that Union Carrier, and we still have a Vanisher in hand as a follow-up for the following turn. So, yeah, pretty solid board there, ending 90 Infinity and Divine Dragonite Felgrand for 3 interruptions. Our whole hand exhausted, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Well, we still had one card left in our hand, but you get what I'm talking about. And we get a search off the number 92. So we're not going into that next turn with just a Vanisher. We can get a search of, like I said previously, searching out that Galaxy Trance, or searching out another Soldier, or an Orbital, or a Sanctuary, whatever it may be. So that card comes in very clutch for getting us that bit of extension during our opponent's turn, that reactive extending during our opponent's turn to be able to search, to be able to have a better follow-up for next turn, to help push for a game. So let me know what you guys think about this types of deck profiles down in the comments below. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, Winterkill signing out. We'll see you guys in the next one.